Well, thank you for your education.
You're welcome.
And I appreciate it very much, and I hope you have a good day.
Thank you, Charlotte. I appreciate that. Let me go to Philemon.
Yes, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Hey, Dan, I love your show. I'm so glad I got through. I call every day, and I finally got through. So
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for taking my call.
Sure thing.
Okay, my question is, I got about $10,000, and I'm looking into investing into the stock market.
Okay.
But I'm a little nervous with Vladimir and his antics over there in Russia.
Right.
And I don't know. I'm curious, what do you think the stock market's going to do based on what's happening over there? You think it's about to plummet or about to keep going up? Or
well,
I'm just concerned to jump in now when it's such a volatile situation.
I think a lot of it's going to be for you, Philemon, is what you jump into. So, for instance, we saw the spike in oil when this happened. Well, that's usually a good thing for stocks. Now, it may be a negative thing for refinery companies, but it would be a good thing for oil companies. So, their stock could do okay in a situation where they're going to be called upon to pick up the, supplies, get some more supply out there to fulfill the demand that is now being interrupted. So, there are certain things like that. Defense companies, might end up being a good thing because there may be a pickup in orders for defense kinds of things. So it depends on what you're in. But in general, look, if this thing continues to escalate, I know the markets are all over the place and they're very fickle. We saw what happened on Monday, then we see what happens on Tuesday. I mean, it's insanity because very little has changed between Monday and Tuesday. But nevertheless, there's that knee-jerk reaction of the market. So if it escalates over there, the markets are going to tank. Now, if it escalates, and I wrote an article about this week, you'll find it interesting if you get my newsletter. If we got to the point where the only leverage that was a possibility was cutting off the capital to Russia from our banking sector, if we were so adamant on not getting involved in any other way, and we did that, that would have a dramatic impact on Russia. They would have to rethink everything, but it would kill our markets. It would kill banking stocks. I mean, it would be a huge blow. We could see a 3,000 point downturn. Now, because we are driven by greed and power, I would suspect that as much as we would hate to get involved with NATO in putting boots on the ground or anything like that, I would suspect that because of the makeup and the lunacy in Washington and in the markets, we may rather do that than hurt our poor friends in the banking industry. So I don't know, but nevertheless, if it does escalate, it's going to, I heard somebody last night say, well, this has no consequence to us. Ukraine doesn't mean anything to us from an economic standpoint. That is a ridiculous statement to make. And the person that said it is someone I have an enormous amount of respect for. It's probably smarter than I am. But it's a ridiculous statement to make. It's clueless because you've got a dramatic impact on the global economy. I mean, you've got the number 3 exporter of grains to Europe now not being able to get their seed in. That's going to have a dramatic impact on the global economy. You've got the number 2 exporter of oil in Russia being cut off for doing that. You've got most of the natural gas going to Europe coming out of Russia, maybe being cut off or even interrupted. It's going to have a dramatic impact on the global economies, and that will impact the United States. I mean, we can't look and say, well, we don't get anything from the Ukraine. Well, I mean, we live in a very small world economically, and we got to think of all those things. So it's a long answer to your question, but the markets are going to tank. I mean, if it escalates, the market's going to tank. But it may not. It may not escalate. It may not, and now's as good a time as any to get in. So if you're getting in for the long haul, the 8 to 10 year time horizon, if you're picking some of the stocks that are on my list, then I don't know, I wouldn't be too overly concerned about it. I may focus a little bit more on energy and some commodities. I have a commodity ETF on my list that I haven't had on my list in 3 years, I don't think. So you may think about some things like that and try to get some diversification. But all in all, if it escalates, markets are going to tank. Make no mistake about it, and they're going to stay tanked for a prolonged period of time.
How long do you think they stay tanked for?
Well, I think,
couple years?
yeah, I think it depends on in other words, if it escalates and it's just a Russia-Ukraine thing, then they're not going to be down too long. I would say it could be 6 months, almost tops, but that's not likely. I mean, I think if it starts to get into some of the Eastern European nations, to start to see Iran come in to supposedly help out Russia and things like that. I mean, it could get out of hand in a hurry. So it's so hard to tell because it's going to be so politically driven. It's not going to be driven by any kind of fundamental. It's going to be driven purely from a political standpoint more than anything else. So it's hard to say. If we see a dramatic downturn in the markets here of 2,000 points that stays there for a year, that is going to impact our economy. So that's going to push the economy down. So the ripple effect is going to be a recession. And then it's going to be waiting for a so-called recovery again in that recession. I mean, it could last years. Best case scenario is we have a stagnant period of time in our economy and markets, which is what we're in now for another 5 years. So we're not seeing hiring, we're not seeing jobs, we're not seeing a lot of progress. I mean, that's one scenario. The other scenario is a depression, and 10 years. Getting out of that. So it's complicated. It's very complicated. I go with what I've been saying is you play both sides. You prepare for that and you prepare for the best case scenario is that it doesn't happen. So you don't put all of your resources and eggs in either one of those scenarios. You try to be prudent and wise and split it up.